Dear liberal friends, what an amazing video, don't you think so? I am really, as an alumni 2017, really proud to be part of this Alliance of Her platform, proud and grateful and happy. This platform is a group of female politicians who support other women, liberal women, in achieving their political goals and in making sure that their leadership is valued. And even though the Alliance of Her platform is only 7 years old, we are already 160 women making part of this platform. And we all followed a very intensive course in which we learned about developing our political strategy, mapping out our political plan, making a team, putting up a campaign, and we were successful. 160 women out of all European countries, the 27 member states, but also Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, the Balkan countries, UK, we all formed together this platform, and with results. Many of us moved into important political positions, important positions in society. We have mayors, we have now members in national parliaments, in European parliaments, and also members of governments in some countries. So a real success, I have to say. And for this, I would really like to ask for a warm round of applause for the people who founded this platform, who came with the idea, who developed it, who continued to advocate in the ALDE party to move on with this program, and of course also for the driving force, the current driving force behind this platform, Adam Vink. So please, an applause for all these people. Now we will move on to the actual debate of today on the importance of activism by women and especially their role in combating authoritarian, totalitarian regimes. And I have really an impressive panel for you, which I will introduce first. We will all have, they will all have a question they can all answer for a while, and then afterwards you see already the microphones in the room. You, of course, also can ask them questions. But before doing this debate, I, of course, have to introduce the guests of tonight. And, of course, the first person I would like to ask on stage is, I have to take my paper, Lucia Plaváková. She is a chancellor and the vice president of Progressive Slovakia. And she is a lawyer, a human rights and gender equality activist. The second person is Anastasia Burakova. She's an alumni of the Alliance of Her, in the class of 21, and the founder of the ARC project. And she works on freedom of speech, freedom of association, and freedom of assembly and labor rights in Russia. Then the next guest, is number 3, Anna Donáth. She's a Hungarian MEP sitting in the European Parliament Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committees, as well as the Employment and Social Affairs Committee. The fourth panelist is Yevheniya Kravchuk, a member of the Women...
Ukraine, yes, that's why the name is difficult to pronounce.
She's a Ukrainian politician, journalist and communication expert, but also, I'm sure you're going to speak about this, a member of the Women Diplomatic Battalion, and she's traveling all over the world to rally support for Ukraine. And then finally, the guest that I don't really have to introduce at all, the Commissioner, Margrethe Vestager. Welcome on stage. So today we are going to have a debate on the politically engaged liberal women, and that to which extent they are really a fear of autocratic regimes. And the first question I'm going to ask is to our commissioner. And the question is actually, why should liberals be concerned about promoting female political leadership? And do you see a link between the rise of autocratic regimes and the rollback of women's rights in general?
Actually, it's a sad question.
It is.
Because I think sometimes we try to gloss over that we are not just making progress, that we also have setbacks. In my country, there is a fight over how women should dress. You know, one part thinks that the veil should come off, and another part insists that the veil should come on. We have all over the planet, including in Europe, discussions about the right to choose. So, not just sort of the female mind, ideas, leadership, but also the female body is still part of the political fight. And this is, of course, why the alliance of Her is absolutely crucial. Because if one is alone in that fight, it easily becomes too much. Then you can withdraw in what other roles you have in your life. And I think for two very fundamental reasons, promoting female leadership is essential for being liberal. And one is, of course, the very fundamental of equality. But the second is that power is better with women. You know, we saw it during the financial crisis that businesses with women on the board, they did better. You see, when women are there, things are better. Not because women are better people than men, but because there is something magic when the many genders come together. And this is why it's a crucial liberal idea to promote female leadership. Because we have a responsibility when it comes to how to exercise power, and that we provide for people who want to exercise it in the best possible way and realize that it's only for lending. Power is never something you own, it's only for lending. So I think it's quite obvious that it must be center stage for anyone who will call themselves liberal to promote female leadership. Because otherwise, we do not live up in a day-to-day basis on the fundamentals that we promote in speeches and toasters and what have you. It's only in everyday life you see what you really believe in. So I'm really looking forward for the regional campaigns and the national campaigns and the European campaigns to see that we put action behind our, I think, glamorous words. And just look at this panel. There is so much to offer. Just look at yourself and your parties. There's so much, not only talent, but also, you know, real female experience out there just to be, you know, promoted, to be seen. So I think it's absolutely crucial. And
do you think, because now we see that, before I saw my mother, my grandmothers fighting for rights, for female women rights, and now we see that there is a little going backwards, and especially in countries where there are indeed autocratic leaders, we see that they consider it as a threat. I don't know how to explain it, but do you think they really fear women in politics because they would make more, they would democratize more, they would foster discussions, debate more?
Well, I think that autocrats fear independent thinking. And a woman in her own right, in her own skin, in her own body, is an independent thinker. So it's really deep what is at stake for autocrats. And of course we've had horrible female leaders. No question about that. But we still, without hesitation, would talk about strong men. And I think there is an important point here, because part of being a woman in politics is also to figure out who you are. That you're not a man in disguise, or a woman in disguising so that no one will realize that you're actually a woman. And that is actually quite difficult, because there's a lot of group pressure Very often when I meet a group of male colleagues in the Commission, I say, oh, you coordinated your clothes today. Because they do that every day. They always wear the same. Which is a bit sad.
It is.
But we should not, I think, get into that trap. Do not Teflonize. Do not get hard. Use everything, because that is where the magic happens. And that, of course, is also where one is vulnerable, because all the attacks on women, they are because we are women. Mm-hmm. But that is also the strongest thing that we have. And I think that is the challenge. Never to shy away, but also to accept that vulnerability.
Okay, interesting lesson. Definitely a very good advice, I think, for many women here in the room. Let me go to Yevheniya. You're Ukrainian, and of course your country is going through a very difficult time. Can you explain a little bit the role women play in this whole war? What is their engagement? Are they active? How do they help the country?
First of all, I would like to thank you for coming to this panel and for the support that all of your countries give to Ukraine, to Ukrainian people. We really value this. I can remember what was my morning of the February 24th looked like. My husband was not at home already because he's head of police department in Kyiv region, and he spent this night already at his place where he worked, and later I haven't seen him for more than 40 days because he could not leave his department in Kyiv region because Kyiv was almost circled and Russian troops were just thousands of kilometers of where he stayed. So I was alone. My daughter was with my mother in Western Ukraine, and my mom called me and said the war has started because I heard the missile and I heard the jet flying over the house. And then I opened the window. I saw the explosion because Kyiv was bombed. And after that, because I'm deputy chair in my faction in the parliament, I'm head of the group, I was calling the MPs saying that, please, we need to come to the parliament and we need to vote to declare the state of war. And after that, every MP, had to decide in what way we can be most efficient in bringing in resilience and bringing victory to our country. Some of our MPs became volunteers and bringing humanitarian aid. Some of the MPs who had practice in serving in the army, they went back to their units. Some of them went to defense units in their city and in their constituencies. And me and my colleagues from different delegations, from delegations in PACE, I'm a member of PACE, and also from different committees who can, deliver the message. Basically, that's, what was very important at that time. We decided to form this Women Diplomatic Battalion, as we called it. And I remember that the first day that I left Ukraine, left the boundaries, I felt really guilty that I'm leaving the country because my husband is fighting, my daughter is in the basement because of the jets and missiles that Russians were sending. And it was on the 8th of March, the International Women's Day. That was the day when we were leaving the country. And the first visit was to Strasbourg. We had meetings with all of the groups, political groups in European Parliament. And then we had an extraordinary session in Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, and that's the only organization, international, who excluded Russia from its membership. And I can't fight with the gun. I don't know how to do it, but I know that I was elected by Ukrainian people, and Ukrainian people are suffering right now. They're being killed, they're being raped, They had to change the location where they live. Just imagine Ireland is a small country, it's around 5 million people. That's the same number, 5 million children had to relocate from the places where they live. Some of them went abroad, some of them relocated inside of the country. So that's what we could do. You know, we could deliver message, deliver the emotion, and also I'm rapporteur on the resolution. It will be on vote in June session in PACE. And the name of this resolution, I chose the name 2 years ago, and it's about women in conflicts and peace reconciliation. So I was sort of writing with my own hands, you know, this story, but also it's always, you need to remember that, of course, women are, you know, the most vulnerable group together with kids during the conflicts, but also women are fighters. In Ukrainian army, we have 17% of women that are serving as soldiers, and up to 30% together with, you know, all of those help and, you know, accommodate. They are leaders of NGOs. You know, the big international organizations, especially in the first months of the war, were not on the ground. No UNICEF, no any United Nations, even Red Cross, they were not on the ground. Because they said, oh, you have a war, actually, you know, we can't come, we'll come after. And we're like, okay, who will deliver the help? So we had the leaders of NGOs, women, who were going to the territories, helping, bringing food, bringing hygiene, bringing water. And they were working on the ground. We have doctors, women doctors who are making operations, and you know, you can hear the missiles all of the time and explosions, and they do the operations. So it's not that women are just only weak during the war. They can be as active on their place, you know, to bring victory. And we probably could have a maybe discussion later, so I won't take too long. But my observation that I see from panel to panel about women's rights and women's engagement, that in the panel there were only women, and in the hall, you know, in the auditorium, 80% women. I mean, we need political leaders of all genders here. I mean, we can't be in our own bubble.
No, you're right. We actually invited one man, but he couldn't come, and so he proposed to be replaced by a woman. But I agree completely, so it's actually true. I have to say, our Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, he calls himself a feminist all the time, and he has written a book on women's rights, so I can recommend it. So there are male politicians who support the case, but indeed we should ask for more support. The next question is for Lucia. In Slovakia, your country has, your party has done a lot on gender equality. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what you have done exactly and what was the result? How are things evolving?
Yeah. When it comes to gender equality and women's rights, the situation in Slovakia is quite worrying these days. Our current parliament might be the most conservative and far-right in our history. And we are, and as a consequence of this, we are, for instance, facing the attempts to limit the access to abortion every 6 months. And although we have seen it also in previous years, there was always few votes for these proposals. And now the situation changed very much because, for instance, the last attempt, which was in autumn, it did not pass only by one vote. So to get you the idea on how alarming the situation in Slovakia is, in previous session of our parliament, there was also a proposal to ban the access to abortion for Ukrainian women. And this was during the days when there were increasing number of reports of Ukrainian women being raped by Russian soldiers. And for instance, also on the next session of our parliament, we have a proposal to ban the rainbow flag on state buildings. So this is only a brief introduction on how the situation in Slovakia is getting worse. And what is the position of our party in this situation? We are the most vocal supporter of gender equality and women's rights, and also LGBT rights in Slovakia. And we are really putting a lot of effort into stopping to stop the worsening of the situation and women's rights in Slovakia. And for instance, as a response to the last attempt to limit the access to abortion, we have organized an online petition and also a 72 hours relay protest in front of the parliament, which was a reaction to the proposal to prolong the waiting period for women to undergo the abortion to 70 hours. So we wanted to show what it really means to wait for 72 hours. And in all of our activities, we are trying to closely cooperate also with feminist NGOs, which really is also a crucial aspect of being seen and trusted as the party who really cares for women's rights. And although a lot of our energy is consummated by our fight against worsening the situation, we are also trying to work on reaching the gender equality in Slovakia. And for instance, our party has a feminist platform, which is doing a lot of activities on promoting gender equality. Our legislative group has proposed several proposals to change the law in order to reach the gender equality, from pay gap to fight against the gender-based violence. And by also trying to lead by an example, we have also implemented quotas on our board. And a few weeks ago, we have had a congress where 42 women's representation of the board is now in place in our party. And this really shows an example also maybe for other parties to be inspired. And what we are trying to do with all our activities is to show that women can stand up and will stand up, and women can speak up and shall be heard. And our party is here to listen to women, to give them space to be heard, and to give them power to change things, and to stand with all women in every fight on women's rights.
Okay, thank you so much for this explanation. Now I move to Anna. I'll move to Anna, to Hungary. Well, in autocratic regimes, we often see attempts by the leadership to repress women's rights and rights from other minorities. Why do you think this is, and how does your party Momentum respond to these practices?
First of all, I'm super happy to sit among these ladies and to be invited by you and by the Alliance of Her, because for a long, long time I thought that just because I'm born as a girl, as a woman, it doesn't mean that I have to talk about this issue. I mean, you know, I'm progressive, please. Mm-hmm. But I was not right. As Margrethe said before, we have to speak out in order to, you know, like learn from each other. But, you know, maybe the process, the past years when I decided to speak upon issues that can represent people's matters, mostly regarding minority rights and women rights, LGBTQ rights, I learned way much more about myself than I thought. So sitting here, it's super important, and I'm not gonna go around of your question. It's just I'm in big trouble. I'm in big trouble because, well, we heard what's happening in Ukraine. I feel that coming from Hungary is a first world problem. On the other hand, when we are in a European Parliament, many times I feel like that, guys, Europe is in rule of law crisis. Europe is in a crisis of autocrats. I mean, it's not a peace project anymore, except if we if we fight for it. So to pull all of this together, first of all, autocrats, what they are famous about, or what's their tactic, they try to centralize everything, and not just in politics, and not just in order to keep power, but centralize every segment of our life. Mostly, but history made by men, and mostly this type of power gained by men, therefore they know the man logic. Why they are afraid of women? Because they don't understand. And this is our power. Not like we haven't seen really bad female leaders as well. Not like we are all the same. Just because we're born as women, it doesn't mean that we are better. But just because we are not all perfect, it doesn't mean we are worse than men leaders. I mean, how many times we heard about quotas that, in the sense, we're going to provide spots, leadership spots for incapable women or not as qualified women. And the answer is like, how many unqualified and incapable men are in position? So putting all this together, living in an autocratic regime, the only way you can fight for is to laugh at the system and don't let them put in their agenda on you. Because what is the Hungarian agenda? Because of course each autocratic agenda can be different, but the Hungarian agenda is tricky. And if you want to understand the rule of law crisis made by our governments, we have to also understand how they're looking at the gender questions. Because they're not saying that women's only good in the kitchen. They just elected the very first female president of Hungary. They are tricky because they can pinpoint it. They have their own. But we shouldn't be tricked by it because our president was selected and nominated based on her loyalty. Meanwhile, she's super smart, educated, she's a role model. So if you want to understand New Age autocrats, we have to understand this logic. It's not black and white, because the moment when liberals start to fight with their agenda, they put us into the black and white way of thinking. It's easy to say that they are bad because they hate women, they don't let them to stand up for themselves, or they don't let them into the leadership. But it's not 100% true. Meanwhile, there's only one woman or female ministers in the new government. It says a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm an MEP for 3 years, and I had the chance to talk in the Hungarian parliament once for 40 seconds. And the thing is that they were more busy afterwards, I mean, from the government party sides, to talk about why I was wearing exactly the same shoes, so why I went to the Hungarian parliament in white sneakers, than what I was telling about the new MFF cycle. Of course, I had 40 seconds, so I understand they didn't get used to this type of fast debate talks like we get used to in the European Parliament, but still, it says a lot. But if you let them to only argue about your shoes, then they win. Instead, I was happy to make them piss off. Let's argue about my sneakers. I mean, who cares? If that's your biggest problem, this tells a lot about you. You have to get this mentality if you are fighting with orthodox conservatives, as I call them in Hungary. But I wanted to say one more thing, and it has nothing to do coming from Hungary or coming from an autocratic regime. It's a message for all of us, and it's really, really pairing with what you just said at the end. It's not just the problem that we are empowering each other within the same bubble. Mm-hmm. The other problem is that we empower each other until the moment we are in the same competition level, and then we are fighting for the same spots instead of fighting for more spots. Mm-hmm. And we keep forgetting when we are just to get elected, or when we are really close to be in a CEO position or whatever, that why we have to let men decide whether there's 1 or 2 or 5 or 100 seats in parliament for women. Why we are fighting for that limited spots? And that moment we forgot everything that we are stand up for, empowering each other. It's easy to empower people when you are not feeling it's a competition. It's not that easy to start working together when we have the power to build up something greater. And I'm sorry to be harsh, but in the sense we are not better than men. If you want to show that we are better, we should learn to empower each other in order to create a higher good and welcome and include more people, more women who are not there yet. And liberals are in that stage right now, so don't give it up. We are in a good way.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting because that's actually what the Alliance of Her is trying to promote. And indeed, we should have this sisterhood amongst us and support each other. Also, if we are in competition, absolutely. But your story is very interesting also because Anastasia, she's from Russia. And there she's really also fighting for women's rights, but also in general, she's in the opposition against the autocratic regime. Maybe you can share also your experiences and give us some other lessons as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure that I'm going to speak a lot about gender agenda, but so first of all, thank you for inviting me to join in this panel session after 100 days of bloody aggression by my country against Ukraine. And so I am grateful for opportunity to address democratic society and especially for the people of Ukraine. I said before my country because millions of Russians, including me, share this guilty and share this responsibility for this war. Yes, we Russian opposition political parties, movements, then independents, journalists, tried to change the system, but we failed in prevention this tragedy. And the war against Ukraine is the war against democratic values and the war against world order. And for sure, it's a war against Russian opposition and Russian activists and Russian civic society in general. So now millions of people left Russia after the beginning of the war, and so many of them face it with pressure because of their anti-war position. For example, some of them dismissed from a job just because they put a sign under the anti-war petition. Then some people were arrested because of anti-war demonstrations. Some of them had searched for special services because just they transferred money to Ukrainian army or to help to Ukrainian refugees. Sure, I will never campaign this. I will never compare these problems with the suffering of Ukrainians who are killed every day by Russian troops. And so our main goal to build the community of Russians who still ready to fight against regime and fight against the war. And the ARC project, which I organized after the beginning of the war, now try to support such initiatives, which still try to do something to stop Putin and stop the war. And now we collect more than 60 such initiatives. Mostly they stay abroad because of so high risk to stay in Russia. And so that people, they don't need any benefits or something like that. They just do what they do because they feel a responsibility. and they feel that they need to do it just because Russian troops kill Ukrainians now, right now, where we sit here. It's really different projects like independent media, then bloggers, then some projects inside Russia who do some things with, for example, trains and some other military infrastructure. And I would like to use this opportunity to ask everyone to support such initiatives and such people who try to do something to stop the war and stop Putin and its regime. So please use any available information channels and try to create some message, anti-propaganda message, and target it to Russian audience. And I hope that one day Russia will be in big European democratic family and become a democratic country.
Thank you so much for your interesting words. They really touch me. So maybe also people in the room, there are 2 microphones, so if anyone wants to ask a question, you can just go to one of the microphones. They're here in front. To any of the panelists, please introduce yourself, and you can ask any question to anyone. But maybe I'll start with Anastasia. You said please support the initiatives. How can we as liberals in our different countries, how can we contribute? Is there any action we can undertake to support your actions?
So I support that Europeans can share such information about initiatives. So now we collect it in one place, in one website, and I want to do a report about such initiatives. And so maybe one of acceptable ways sharing the information and maybe help to share it with Europeans and maybe support by consultations and some other methodological help.
Okay. I don't see anyone. You have a question, sir?
Thank you very much. My name is Olle Schmidt. I'm from Sweden. I'm a former MEP. I think this has been extremely interesting, and it's an honor to listen to you. But I have perhaps a tricky question, because tomorrow we are voting for 2 men in the ALDE position of co-presidents. One can have, I like the 2 guys very much, but why aren't any one of you actually trying to be a candidate? I think a duo, it could be acceptable, but I think it's a bit strange with 2 men. Thank you.
Does anyone want to answer?
There is an easy answer, from my perspective at least, because from informal circles they were reaching out to me that, don't you want to run? I mean, it was a hot topic for a while. And you know, it's an easy answer that in order to become the president of ALDE, you have to put into account how much you have to travel, how often you have to be all around and deal with everything. And if you are a young female politician, you also try to do something which I learned from the beginning doesn't exist, to have a work-life balance. So I think it's not, we shouldn't be afraid to say out loud that, yes, it's great to have more women in powerful position and leadership, and yes, let's go for young female politicians, but let them also try to figure out a little bit of work-life balance as well, and if they decide that they're balancing a little bit in the other way, it's also fine. Not necessarily every female politician wants to do that, or in that order, but many times we forgot that just because we are women politicians, it doesn't mean that we have to be everywhere, and we have to be always brave and always stood up. And this is when we have to look for those males who are the real feminists. I'm working closely with Ilan, and I think in the sense ALDE is going to a good direction. I'm not afraid as a female politician or a female member of ALDE that these two male won't be able to create a more progressive ALDE than if we would sit there. We have to, I think, overcome if we are progressive enough. That is not necessarily only you have to be a woman in order to do it in that way. And if you look at to the vice presidents, come on guys, have you seen so many capable women in one board? So I'm not afraid of the future of ALDE.
Maybe also the way we do politics can be changed a little bit. I saw it at the local level when I entered. The meetings were at 6. I had 2 little kids. I said, no meeting at 6. We do the meetings at 8 when they're in bed. So maybe even at the ALDE level, we can rethink how we organize ourselves. After COVID, we saw that it was possible to have digital meetings. So maybe we can find the work balance, private life and work balance also through reorganizing how we do politics.
Indeed.
I see Tineke as well, who has a question. Yeah.
Yes, hello. I'm Tineke van Holland. I'm sorry for my voice, but I'm sure, I hope you can hear me, and the theme of today is she will be heard, so but I'm heading up the Belgian Liberal Women Association as part of OpenVLD. So thank you so much for the very interesting panel today. I fully agree with what was said about it's not about changing the women and the way we are and what we do. It's about changing the system. And there's an example given by Eva. But I was wondering, what is your kind of one tip you would give to us about how to change the system and how to making much more steps forward? Because we have made steps in the past. But I believe we should not take baby steps anymore, but really go fast forward, let's say, to have that women empowerment. So, question for all of you, or for Mrs. Vestager to start with. Thank you so much.
Voilà. We have the golden tip.
Yeah, well, but the point of women in leadership is not that there should be no male leadership. Mm-hmm. The point is change. So I have no problem with the ALDE leadership that may be elected. I think we will have a progressive, wonderful ALDE family under their leadership. But to change the system and to do that fast, actually I will settle for slow change, because I have seen no change and I have seen backlash.
Unfortunately.
So change for the better is enough for me. And I think that one important thing is what Anna said lastly, that we need to fight for more positions to open for women. Mm-hmm. And I think the saddest compliment that I have ever had was one who said, I'm so happy that you still talk about gender equality now that you yourself has made it. Mm-hmm. This idea that you just take the ladder with you, because I think the one thing that one can do is to make sure that everyone feels this as part of never a burden, but a responsibility, no matter your gender.
I like that, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So probably I'll be next. Well, right now in Ukrainian parliament we have 23, maybe 24% of women. And guess what? That's the same number as in American Congress. If you put together all of the two parties, Republicans and Democrats, because Democrats have 50 and Republicans like 10. So, putting together, you have the same amount. We did have the gender quotes. In our election code, we put in 1-5, you need to have 2 and 3 of different gender. Mm-hmm. And I think it can work, at least for the beginning, to have the proper amount, the number of women being able to get in, because I mean it is all of the problems to campaign. I mean the women's salaries are less than men, and to campaign you need to have money to fundraise. It's the work and life balance. Exactly. I mean you can't forget about that. But I really think that the very important thing is not just to have a woman in the board, a woman in the bureau, a woman in the government, because you have to be modern. You need to have a woman. It's the matter for women to be able to take political decisions. Like in our government, we have 3 vice prime minister women. One is responsible for European integration. You've heard her today addressing I mean, she's probably the busiest person in Ukraine because she's responsible for European integration. Another is responsible for all the humanitarian things, the corridors, the reintegration. And third, for economic, for this Marshall Plan for Ukraine, if you say so. So that is, the core. The positions need to be, for decision making, not just having a woman somewhere because you need to have a woman.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Don't know if any other wants to comment. No. Then maybe we can go to the questions because there are still people standing up.
It's so great to see that there are lines.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Fiona O'Loughlin and I'm a member of the Irish Senate and a proud member of Fianna Fáil and, of course, the ALDE party. I'm a friend of Xenia's. We are both members of PACE and we work closely together. And it's just inspirational and motivational to be here to listen to every single one of you. And I think it's particularly important that we hear Anastasia's voice, because the voice of those in Russia that are anti-war and have been oppressed needs to be heard by so many people. I consider myself a feminist, but also an equalist. And I think that that campaign for gender equality has to be consistent and it has to be constant. I've just come from a leadership group that we have on the second floor here with women from Ireland, from Sweden, from Romania and from the UK. And we were talking about values in leadership and the values that are the most important. Now, listening to every one of you, I know absolutely that integrity is, one of the values that you have right up there, because your honesty and integrity comes through. But if you were to pick a value that you feel is important to you and your particular type of leadership, what would that value be? And also, what other value would you pick that you think is important in general for leadership? Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. I don't know who wants to start. What are important values for you?
Short answer. One,
yes,
please.
very short.
Freedom. For me is freedom, the biggest value.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I can agree, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
I would say maybe respect and dignity.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say in leadership, that may sound strange, but that is actually the team. I don't think anything can be achieved without people coming together. Team, community, nation, that must be core. That I think of that as core in the leadership task.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. That's just been top class. Appreciate it, and appreciate too that, from Xenia's perspective, freedom absolutely has to be up there. And that was one of the themes that came up unexpectedly from our own group, but probably reflecting that. Thank you all, ladies.
Okay, let's go to the other microphone.
Hello, I'm Júlia Smash from ML International. I'm vice president of that, and I'm the new member of the advisory board of the Alliance of Her, also alumni. I remember I had the pleasure to meet one of you at this occasion. So I have two things to ask you. First, an advice, then a favor. We discussed a lot during the Congress about the importance of our network, of the community, how to increase women in politics, how to increase our community, and so on. So how could we do more and better to go faster about the implication of women in politics, first of all. Second, I would like to ask a favor about regarding of your position to all of you, some help regarding the program that we have for our alliance, for our community. And it's as role model as you are. We need people like you, women like you, to pull the other one up and to earn some times, to earn visibility, and to create a real link, a real family. Here we are together for the liberal family, but inside we are also another community, the female leaders in politics, and I think it's real important to be really connected one to the other. So it's a pleasure to assist to this very interesting discussion, so thank you for you to be here and to hear your good words and vibes.
Thank you so much. Okay, anyone wants to comment? On the networking, I think we will do a lot of networking within the Alliance of Her, and indeed we have to reach out to all women, as was said before. I often also get the question, why are you still advocating women's rights, and you had all the opportunities and look where you are now, but it's not for us that we are doing this. We should do this for all women, small children already, that the expectations the parents have are the same for boys and girls, that they get the same opportunities through life, and indeed we should do this all together. Anyone else wants to comment?
I can respond to the favor part. I hope I can give you some good news that this favor is an ongoing process, at least from my party's point of view, that we come 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I can't count anymore, the little sister of the Women's Academy that ALDE has. We have a momentum version in Hungary as a Women's Academy, which I'm happy to see that from every level, so from community leaders and social workers as well joining, then also like local municipality members and so on, and council members, even up till the age of 70. There were some members who said that there's always something new to learn, and they need new energy from the young girls, and it's amazing to see them together. You said, many of you said that there's enough from baby steps. I think that baby steps always needed. A lot of baby steps actually makes the run, the marathon. And if we said that we are fed up with baby steps and want to jump, I think I love that power, and let's jump. But maybe I don't forget that baby steps also important. So I wish for more this type of initiatives, but again, they were an example, a best practice, that we could a little bit change it and alter it to the Hungarian reality. But we need these best practices to share, but then also to act upon that, bring it home, give a face to that. So not just those who are already in position, but also, like thinking different other levels. Because sometimes a good community leader can empower way much more the girls to end up running for these seats than us. So I think it's like a multiple level task to do. And let everybody to do it in their own way, because we are, again, I'm sorry, that's my agenda, but we are all different. Just look around. We don't have to be the same way feminists and the same way leaders, because there's so many girls, from the youngest till the oldest, who are also very different, and they all need to find their role models and their examples. So let and forgive us to be different and appreciate the difference, unity in diversity. Let's take it in practice.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hello, Hannah Bepsworth, UK Liberal Democrats. On the subject of involving all women and on unity and diversity, I was talking to a colleague of mine at lunchtime about how women from low-income backgrounds sometimes get left behind and their aspirations are not recognized. And we also have, in Europe, we have a lot of women politicians, but we're still a very we don't reflect the ethnic minorities in our continent in politics. And similarly, when it comes to disability representation and LGBTQ representation, We can have countries that seem very progressive. My country, Scotland, had at one point the gayest parliament in Europe, as the press called it. But the leader of the Scottish government used the pandemic to give in to her backbenchers' bigotry against transgender women. So what I want to think about is, when we say we bring all women with us, how do we really bring all women with us and reflect the diversity within our community of women?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone wants to comment, because I think it's really an issue. It's, we are fighting for women's rights, but on the other hand, we are, as was said before, diversity enriches the team. And it's not just women, it's also other people, people with disabilities, LGBTQ community, all of them. You've said it before, I think, that diverse boards have better results, no?
But I think it deserves its own room, so to speak, its own panel, so that it doesn't become such a whataboutism. Because as I think it's important not to say that things are even worse, because you're right, the stats absolutely prove your point. So let's talk more about this. I think it takes its own discussion and its own initiatives, but just really important not to give up on this. I don't know if any of you hears the podcast, The Guilty Feminist. It usually starts with the moderator. She asks the audience, because it's also live, who has done something feminist? And let's set the bar really low, because she always repeats someone who raised their hand and said, I took the Metropolitan Police to court and I won. Because when they wanted to grieve the murder of a woman politician in the UK. So they start really low. So someone say, I've stopped shaving my legs. And say, okay, for real? No, just for the season. And I think that's exactly the approach about baby steps. It's absolutely okay to do something small. Just to have a cup of coffee with a colleague when you realize that she's not in a good place. And that doesn't have to be a lifelong mentoringship. It can just be that cup of coffee, because maybe that inspires something else. And it's just my point. Any progress is good, because we're sliding backwards or standing still. And sometimes it's much easier, because, you know, we cannot imagine how can we be courageous as you are. Because that's not for us, but everyone can do a small thing and help out. And when we make the network, then even better.
Good. Okay, maybe because I see still a couple of people standing near the microphones, and I think we're almost. I don't see Adam here, but
I just would
like
to add one note that, as I mentioned, we have a feminist platform in our party, and this feminist platform is not only promoting gender equality and women's rights, but also promoting LGBT rights and focusing on other minorities. So we are just looking at it on a broader level. So we are including all of the groups which are vulnerable as well.
Okay. Yes, you go ahead.
Oh, hello. My name is Joyce Olmsted. I'm from the Liberal Democrats also. And I'm also an Alliance of Her board member. Thank you so much for being there. You're all very inspirational. Thank you. I've met some of you. My question, I think, is, a difficult one, although a hopeful one. What difference do you think it would make to our world and peace and war right now if most leaders were women? I guess it's another way of saying that I thought when the war started that, oh my goodness, if only we had women. So what difference does it make to the peace project? Because I think peace is really ultimately important. And the other thing is just to say thank you. I think, yes, it's really important for me that as we fight for equality and balancing the playing field, getting, equal women and men, that we also do it in our diversity, as Hannah said. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone a view on how the world would look like if leaders were all women? Would that be
Obviously better. but only if it's women and not women in disguise as men. And this is one of the reasons why I advocate that it doesn't have to go so fast. Because when you're changing a system and you want to change it irreversibly, then it's the entire system that needs to change. So it cannot be a system where you have the same number of men and women, but all the women are also wearing pinstripe suits. And everyone is still working round the clock because they have a partner who will do all the child caring and everything else. It's a system where everyone can have a full life, because this is why I say there's no such thing as a work-life balance. There's only life. And it's a mess. And if life is a mess, and we can be there as who we are, then, of course, it's better. Because it's the stereotypes, it's the group pressure, it's the lack of imagination, it's the lack of feeling empathy and humanity. And that is not about men as a gender, it's about a system. And that is why it would be better if we had a different balance in leadership.
Thank you.
Okay, interesting. Any additions? Otherwise, I'll pass the microphone.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Alina. I'm from USR, from Romania. I'm co-founder of a project which is called Women in Politics inside the party. And one of our goals is to increase the representation of women at all levels in the party. We don't have the numbers for the entire party, but for some of the branches we have, and we have maximum 1/3 female membership in the party, and is worse at leadership level, so in the bureau of the party and so on, in the parliament, and the number of female MPs. And I was just wondering, because we are trying to come with initiatives to propose for the leadership of the party, if any of your parties has experience about having opinion polls to see what keeps women from getting involved into politics, and or special targeted recruitment campaigns for women that would maybe help us bring more female colleagues.
I can give you numbers of different level of the involvement in politics, how it changes for numbers of women inside. Like on the local level, you would have half and half when you are in a small city, and then when you go to the regional level, it will probably drop by 30%, and then when you go to the national level, it's around 22, as I said. So that's like the difference. And strangely, we haven't had in Ukraine any mayor of the big city woman. That's very strange for me. I think it's something about this stereotype that probably for our society, that the leader of a community, a big community, should be, a guy. And so we're moving there. But I also think that it's very important when a woman reaches actually the high position, that helps the sisterhood that we talked. Because sometimes when a woman goes up, she sort of forgets to bring together other women colleagues, and and she's okay in this mad world. So I think we need to remember that everyone, each of us, started from these baby steps at one point.
And I would just add one more thing, because I completely agree with you, is to help each other to overcome, I don't know if I'm saying it well in English, the so-called FOMO feeling of our generation, especially this fear of missing out. I experienced that among female members of my party is highly represented, this feeling, that in order to do such a thing like politics, and not just be in a local level, but then be responsible of the regional chapter of your party, or get into the board or the presidency, is like you have to give up something. Because if you are not always there, if you're missing out something, a conference, like every meetings, every events where you were invited, then they're gonna leave you behind, and then you are out. You have one chance, which is not true. I used to feel that way, and then I realized that no, if I can trust people, political team around me, in the party, in the country, then I'm not going to be forgotten to say no to a couple of things in order to have this so-called work-life balance, which let's call it life. It's a better definition. But we have to help each other in that way as well, to not build upon this fear that you either 1,000% in or you are out. Because if you're asking what I experience, why there's less women that we can bring in, is because my women colleagues, have a lot of things they want to do. And they think that, okay, in lower levels, they can succeed more and they can make better change because they don't have that fearness of missing out something important. They can put their life more balanced together. And I think this is a bad illusion. It's not true that the higher you are, the more you have to be afraid of missing out if you are not there all the time. But in order to overcome it, we need everybody, not just empower each other as women, but also the men. Not letting have the fear overcome the success we can put it on the table. And then more women going to say, okay, I want to join a party, okay, I want to do even more, I want to take more responsibility within community leadership, because that's party politics if we are translating it.
Okay. But also sometimes politics is really boring.
Indeed. So this is why don't be afraid to miss out.
It's time consuming, it's really time intensive, a lot of it is really boring. Now, if you've seen Borgen, it's a good portrait of Danish politics, only they have fast-forwarded so you don't see all the boring parts. And I don't think that women have the same capacity of being bored as men. I think it's simply sooner that we look at the watch and say, I have no time for this, I have things to do, and then off we go. And this is why...
This is true.
This is why it's important to make politics faster, more intense, better timed, less boring.
Yes, absolutely. Indeed, rethinking the way we do politics.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
I see two more people at the microphone. I have to wrap up. Yeah? Okay. So we go quickly. Yes, please.
Thanks a lot. My name is Elke Grote. I work for a company in healthcare called Novartis. So I am not a politician. I'm a businesswoman. I thank you for this very interesting discussion. And for me, what is very interesting, but even more shocking, is that we in business, we have exactly the same issues and challenges as you. Also, since 2000, I'm volunteering in Brussels, in Belgium, in a social sector. And guess what? In the social sector, women have the same challenges as you in politics and we in business. So one observation about careful commenting. You mentioned it very clearly. I think every woman in this room has had the same thought as you just expressed here about the role of female political leaders in peacemaking. But also, I think we are very careful. We're very careful when we talk about the impact of, for example, societal crises like war, like COVID situation. Think about all the women that did homeschooling while they were still doing their jobs. Of course, there are also men, but look around you, it was almost all women. If you look at poverty, poverty impacts women much more. And from my experience working within business, men, my male colleagues, they don't expect from me to be gentle. They expect from me to speak up. So it's a plea for us to dare to say what are the differences, what are the experiences that we have. And then maybe I do have a small ask is, with the observation I have today that your challenges are very much the same as our challenges, maybe we have to also work across the different professional sectors, politicians, business, and also social sector, because as I said, our challenges are very similar. Thank you.
Absolutely, thanks. We should indeed network not just amongst politicians, but indeed with business, with other groups in society, absolutely. Quickly, because they really have to wrap up, yeah?
Yes. Hello, my name is Somaya Dehban. I'm a Dutchified Iranian and on a mission to join the European Parliament at some point. What I hear today, mostly you're focusing on the fact that we should advocate for equality of opportunity, not the equality of outcome. Because if we go on the route of equality of outcome, we become autocrats deciding what will be the outcome. And also the question about representation. As you very well mentioned, the current co-presidents, they do represent the desires of women, so we are not worried that one of them is not a woman, because they are going to be representatives of our wishes as well. And I want to bring this to a little bit beyond the European boundaries and to my country of origin, Iran, and echo the words of Nobel Peace Prize laureate Dr. Shirin Ebadi. In 2016, she said, if you want to support the women in Iran, send female ambassadors to Iran. So the autocrats there get used to seeing women in power. And please, when you send them, go as you dress up like this. Don't go as covered up women that by many, it's a choice. If women choose to cover up, perfect, but it should not be forced upon them as it is in Iran. So on behalf of Iranian women, in your own countries, if there is an opportunity to send new ambassadors to Iran, please send women, because that's, they don't need engaged politically engaged liberal women. They just need to see more women in position of decision-making and power in politics, and that would benefit Europe greatly as well.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have to stop
shortly. First of all, thank you for each panelist for your discussion. It was very interesting. I come from Georgia. I'm leader of the political party, Liberal Party there. And my background before becoming the chairperson of the party was working for empowering women. And I would share my experience. It was quite difficult. It took me a couple of years to get my party fellows get used to the idea of equality and women in the party. And it was quite difficult. You said it's okay when we have two presidents because they represent us, but I think we have to fight to be represented by women as well, because before coming here, there was a leaders meeting of this Congress, and I was there as a leader of the party, and mostly there were men. It was men-dominated leaders meeting, and I think we have to take it into account because it doesn't happen by itself. It took me a couple of years to get more women into the party and campaign for them to be involved and to run as a candidates. So I would ask you to be more uncompromised. I think we need uncompromised fight to get place and to be more representative in politics. And political parties are for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe these are really interesting words to finish this debate, but I'm sure all of the people here in the panel, and I would like to thank you very much for your presence and your very interesting contributions, are willing to answer all of your questions by email. You can contact them, I'm sure, and of course also during the drinks. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you.